Yeah, can you repeat the question? Your voice was breaking.
When everybody's back, I'd like to answer the question the lady has asked about, is it Yogita has asked
Yes.
about, she doesn't understand how being, opting for stimulation leads to toxemia. So I'd like to answer that
Yes,
for
yes,
her.
yes. That's why I launched this whiteboard also.
Oh, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I've got one screen there.
Yeah, Yogita already joined. I think SP is there to join, and Soparna, I think, and Caroline also is there too. Yeah, let's wait for a couple of more minutes and then we'll start the discussion. Yeah.
Victoria?
Yes, Minu.
Does drinking water also depend on the climate? Like if it is hot and
Yes.
humid?
Yes, absolutely. The amount of water that you will drink will depend on your age, your state of health, the climate that you live in, the amount of, physical work that you do. If you're a breastfeeding mother, there's so many variables in how much water any given person should drink in a particular day. And absolutely hot weather and hot climate is going to affect how much thirst you have, and whether you live in a humid climate, if some of the drier climate, hot climates, you don't perspire as much. Some of the more humid climates, you pour sweat out. It just depends. Some people also as well, Mina, excellent question. Some people are really good or have very active skins as well. And this is heredity. And some people sweat a lot more than other people do. So some people lose a lot more bodily fluid than other people do. Some people lose more bodily fluid because they're, you quite often see, obese people are profuse sweaters, and it's the body is just pouring out waste material from the skin, and they get very thirsty. So there really is so many variables, and to say to a person, oh, you need to drink a litre of water or 2 litres of water a day is just such a wrong thing. It's such a medical way of coming at it. We really have to, teach people to listen to the voice of their organism. I mean, I work with people that are on all sorts of medications, have all sorts of health issues, and someone who was healthy, I would hate to think that someone was healthy was drinking 2 litres of water a day, but some of my clients, that's what they're drinking, and that's what they need to drink. The body will indicate what it requires, and we have to listen to that. But the intelligence is to, when you feel thirsty, you sip a mouthful, you sip another mouthful, you sip another mouthful, and you stop when you feel that's enough. This thirst has been sated, as opposed to picking up a great big glass of water and going glug, 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 because that's how we tend to do things. We tend to be, race it down sort of thing. So we just drink, when we do drink, we drink slowly, and we drink according to what will satisfy the thirst at any given moment. So, yeah. Your children have come home from school and they've been running around all day in the hot climate and they're drinking a lot of water. Well, that's understandable, isn't it? But you've been sitting at home all day in the air conditioning on your computer, and you don't have that same level of thirst. So absolutely, it's and diet. Diet affects. We are an animal that's supposed to have. We're supposed to eat. Vast majority of our diet should be raw fruit and vegetables, and so few of us, globally eat that way. So many people live on, people, meat eating, cooked food, lots of salt, spices. The vast majority of people are in highly toxemic states. Their diet is very irritating, and when the organism is irritated, it's going to release liquid from the cells and tissues to dilute the irritation, and that is right action. The body is always doing the right thing. The body's going to get rid of you know, hydration to try and dilute the irritation. So what we do is we don't just keep doing the things that keep irritating us. We stop doing those things as opposed to continuing those and just flushing it all through. I mean, when the body is irritated, when the body is poisoned, dilution is absolute right action. You know, I remember Kevin Hinton saying to me, you know, in case of poisoning, dilute, 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 you know, and that's what we do, you know, and the body will indicate when it's thirsty. But even when we're in a fever, even when you're in a fever, we still do not drink lots of water. So many people think, oh, I'm just going to flush myself through. I'm just going to wash all this out. And they really don't understand how the body actually does work. And you know, even in a fever, you drink according to thirst. You might go 24 hours and take nothing in whatsoever, no water, no nothing. If you have no thirst while you're in the fever, you don't drink then either. You drink according to thirst.
Yes,
every time.
absolutely. So voice of the organism is the top of everything that we propose. Identify your thirst and sip. We are suckling animal, not drinking animal. So now coming to Yogita's request to connecting pleasure seeking with toxemia. Right. So yeah, will you explain this chain that I have drawn, or yeah, how do you? Yeah,
absolutely.
Right. So let's
Absolutely.
try and understand this chain first from Victoria. Yeah.
So the vast majority, as Kalyan was saying, you know, the Professor Edmund Bordeaux-Zeke, in his writings, he talks about the struggle between the cerebrospinal system and the organo-vegetative system. So the human body has the cerebrospinal, which, you know, the actions of the cerebrospinal, so the brain, you know, the nervous system, as Kalyan was saying, you know, we are an organism we have the most highly developed nervous system of any animal, and we have the neural capabilities and capacities to make choices and so forth. And we are hedonistic, we are pleasure seeking. You know, if we try something and we like it, we're going to have it again and again. And if we opt things that are not in their natural state, like Kalyan was saying, he so often uses the example of a mango in its natural state, or mango jam. He says, you know, mango jam where the mango's been cut up and boiled with a whole heap of refined sugar and made into this sweet, sticky, you know, like it's a food that has been denatured. It has been altered from its natural state. We're hardly likely to eat much more than a couple of mangoes, but mango jam, we'll just go keep, you know, something that is really, you know, pleasuring, something that is very stimulating, actually, you know. So when we opt a stimulating, you know, diet and lifestyle, you see for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. And so if we are stimulating the organism, you know, what goes up must come down, and the flip side, and it's the same coin. We were saying the other day, the same coin, the flip of this same coin. We stimulate the organism and then the organism slumps because we've expended energy. Okay. And if we live this way all the time, if every day this is the way we live, we're stimulating the organism, we're pushing the organism past that which is natural for it, we are expending the nerve force, the natural innate nerve force that was bequeathed at point of conception. If we're expending that at a higher rate than what is normal and natural, we're going to lead to a state of innervation of the organism. Okay, now innervation means not enough nerve force for the body to carry out its required activities, its biological essential activities, and something's going to give. And what gives is that end stage, is the drainage. We don't have enough nerve force for the body to get rid of its biological waste materials. And when we don't have enough energy for the body to get rid of its biological waste materials, our elimination is reduced. And therefore, so for example, if you produce 100 units of poison, biological waste per day, you should eliminate that. But if you don't have enough energy to eliminate 100 units of waste per day, and you only have enough energy to eliminate 80 units of waste per day, then you are accumulating. There's still 20 units that you produce that you couldn't get rid of. It's still in the system. This is the accumulation, and this starts and continues and continues and continues. As we say, disease is not an entity, it's not a thing, it's a process. And after 10 years of life, you've got this much. And after 20 years of life, you've got this much. And after 30, because nothing is changing, every time the body's raising a fever, you're suppressing it. And so this accumulation of toxins just gets worse and worse and more chronic and more chronic. And medical profession know well about the progression of disease. You know, but they say to people, I've heard many stories over the years of people starting with, you know, a kidney problem, while the doctor's saying you're most likely you'll end up with some sort of cancer in this, you know, area. Women's problems, you know, women start off, oh man, I've seen some interesting cases. They start off with heavy periods, and then they start getting fibroids and cysts and issues going on, and it just snowballs and it just gets worse. And you know, asthma is, as Mr. Jaffrey used to say, is simply bronchitis with knobs on was his term, which basically means, you know, you get a fever, you suppress it, you start getting problems in the lungs. The body's going to send the waste material to the lungs. It's an organ of elimination. And it just gets worse and it gets worse and it gets suppressed and it gets suppressed. And then we've got coughs, and then we've got bronchitis, and then eventually we've got all sorts of lung problems, asthma, where everything's starting to harden, where the bronchial tubes and the lungs, the tissue of the lungs is starting to harden, and the body can't get enough air, and it just progresses on. And then people end up with, you know, a lot of people end up with lung cancer that never smoke cigarettes. There's lots of, you know, so they're like, oh, but he never smoked. You know, people are amazed when someone has lung cancer who never smoked. You don't have to smoke a cigarette to end up with you know, in the end stage of the disease process, because that's what cancer is. It's the end stage of disease process. So can you see how through stimulation, through this diagram, we get to toxemia? And we get to toxemia because when we overstimulate the organism, we expend its nerve force, it can't carry out its proper functions, it's going to start holding waste material. The body will become innervated, it will reduce, its elimination will reduce, guaranteed, and you will end up with a toxemic state of the organism.
Yeah, does that answer, Yogita, your question? See, why stimulation we need to understand at the first level. The stimulation happens because of the pleasure-seeking behavior. Why at all we'll go for stimulation, right? Because we always seek pleasure, and because of the neural evolution, the stage of cerebrospinal organism of us, like what we are right now, we have an evolved intentional capability through which we modify the surroundings, like unlike any other organism. That's why we are actually in this planet. Actually, we are dominating.
Okay.
Yeah. Could you connect the dots from stimulation to the toxemia? Right. There is a question from Soparna that is sweet always toxic? Is sweat always toxic?
Is sweat always toxic?
Not, yeah. Sweat always toxic. That's a question in the chat. Yeah.
Is sweat or as we perspiration? Yeah, that's what we're asking.
Yes, perspiration. Yes,
absolutely. Perspiration is always going to carry an amount of bodily waste material. That's what it's designed. That's what the body's, that's our skin is our biggest eliminative organ. It's designed to eliminate waste from the skin. If it carries, and this is right action. So is it going to be toxic? Yeah, you wouldn't want to be licking your sweat off and swallowing it back down again, just like you wouldn't want to be drinking your urine. There is all, is urine always toxic? Is urine always toxic? Yeah, urine is always toxic. It is the excretion. It is the elimination of. It's what it. That's what the kidneys do. Their whole job is to filter waste material from the bloodstream. And when we perspire through our skin, that's why we should always look after our skin and keep our skin nice and open and able to perspire. Whatever comes out through the skin is going to be carrying an amount of waste material. Is that waste material so acidic and acrid that it's going to burn the skin, make it red, make it itchy, make it sore? Hopefully not. Normal perspiration, when we say healthy perspiration, which will still have an amount of toxicity in it, won't do that to your skin. But when the bloodstream is very acidic, when the bloodstream's carrying lots of irritating waste material, and the lungs and the skin the lungs and the kidneys can't handle the load, and there's more getting pushed out through the skin, and what's coming out through the skin is even more toxic than normal, that's when we start to see skin issues. Dandruff, just something is, so many people have this flaking scalp and, we'll use some sort of shampoo to stop the dandruff. You don't stop the dandruff, you stop the reason for the dandruff. That's what Nature Cure does. We don't stop the symptom, we stop the reason for the symptom. Yes.
Sweat. For that matter, actually anything which is coming from the body
out
on its own, anything like mother's milk is not a toxin, but it is not coming on its own, right? So anything which is coming,
but that in itself, like if you're working with mothers and babies and you see a baby that's not thriving, you see a baby that's throwing up the mother's milk, large, like, oh, I've worked with women like this. The baby can't keep the mother's milk down because mother's milk is living tissue, is tissue of the mother. And if the mother is not a healthy woman, then you guarantee that her milk is not healthy. And the baby's, I've worked with a mother and baby where the baby started to do so much better when we took the baby off the breast milk. And that is an extreme example, but the breast milk was, the baby would vomit up the breast milk all the time and the mother was just in a situation, a lot of it was mental, a lot of her disease causation was mental. She was very stressed. And we just thought, well, we're not going to be able to get this woman in a healthy state in a rapid amount of time, and we need to look after this child. So we took the child off the breast and boom, put it on raw goat's milk, a little bit of diluted juice, and that baby started to thrive. So breast milk should not be containing waste material. Breast milk should, but it will if the mother's a sick woman. Absolutely.
Right.
Breast gland tissue. That's where the body holds. It's lymphatic. It's where the body holds waste.
So is your question answered, Soparna?
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Right.
So, anybody? Carolyn, do you have any doubts to clarify or any points to share? You need to unmute.
Sorry, my husband was mowing the lawn and it was loud.
I had to tell my husband to hold off too.
I'd often ponder, because I see people who are elderly and very unwell with many comorbidities or disease states that seem to be able to muster up a fever a couple of times a year. And how is that explained? Is that just because that individual has more innovation genetically? More nerve force, even though they've had cancer, they've had all different things, and they're living with these, and they've been living with them for maybe 40 years, and they're 80 years old, but they still seem to be able to muster up this process. I'm jealous.
So, absolutely.
It's
I had
my
a fever.
dad. It's my
I know,
dad.
I had a fever the other week and I thought, oh no, why did I want this? But yeah, but we are jealous when we don't get one, when we think we need one. But really what it comes down to, Carolyn, it comes down to energy. You know, it comes down to, does this body have enough nerve force to raise a fever? And there's, you know, so many reasons why a body will raise a fever. And you know, you do see, on the other hand, you see people who are so chronic that they just don't have the energy to raise a fever. But you know, you also see people, you know, you can take two people and they've lived exactly the same lifestyle, they've eaten and they've lived in the same part of the world and they've breathed the same air and they've eaten the same food, and yet one, you know, has health problems and the other one doesn't. Well, that comes down to heredity, you know, like nerve force, energy, vitality is bequeathed at point of conception, and no two people are the same. You know, even brothers and sisters from the same parents, you know, some children end up with, you know, I remember my mother and her brother were the two children of my grandparents, and my mother very much got the strong, thankfully, luckily for me, my mother got the strong heredity there, and my uncle was always weak and always sickly, and he died many years ago. He never thrived throughout his entire life. So, you know, and if we were to go back and do a full diagnosis, we work out exactly why that was. You know, Mr. Jaffrey said there was no fairies at the bottom of the garden. When you do a diagnosis, you can work out exactly what's going on. But you must also realize too, Carolyn, the effort of the organism, the response of the organism is always for survival. Is always for survival. And if someone, you know, and we're seeing this COVID going around the globe at the moment, and really chronic people are raising fevers, you know, and this is, you know, and quite often people will raise a fever just before they die. You know, the fever is the response of the organism. It is the body in its absolute utmost throwing everything at it to increase, to you know, it's about survival. You know, it's the law of survival. Every cell in the DNA, whatever you want to say, is absolutely programmed for survival. And so someone who's 80, who's in a chronic state of health and maybe on medications and so forth, you know, their body is still, you know, their body is still responding. Their body is still trying, you know, it's mustering what it can. And, you know, we can never say, well, this person's got this going on, so why hasn't this person? You know, there's always such a great big different, you know, set of parameters within why one person will raise a fever and another person won't. You know, people, and this is why, you know, you get this concept of, oh, someone's catching something, you know, like, oh, you know, everybody in the household all got sick around about the same time. So one person passed it on to the next person, passed it on to the next person. That's not the case. It's the case that, you know, when you have a family living together in a house, especially, you know, they share heredity. They breathe the same air, they're living in the same location, they're eating the same food, you know, and people's bodies sync with one another when they're living in the same environment. You know, we all have human radiations, and we all tend to sync. You know, just recently my daughter had a fever, then I raised a fever, then my son raised a fever. But my husband didn't raise a fever. He rarely raises a fever with us because he doesn't live as nature cure as we do. So
that's the right term. That's the right term. The body raises fever. Body doesn't get fever from outside. Yes.
No, absolutely. And I didn't catch my daughter's cold.
Yes.
And my son didn't catch my cold. We were just all at a stage where our bodies were ready, and our bodies are all, you know, we're all, you know, healthy, vital. You know, I'm healthy, I've got good vitality, and I've raised my children so they're healthy and they've got good vitality. I've never suppressed their fevers. They've always been able to go to bed and let their fevers run their course. They've never had medication in their bloodstreams. Nothing's been stopped for them. So they raise fevers. And, you know, a healthy organism is a responsive organism, but even a sick organism is still going to try to respond. You know, even a sick organism will do its best. You know, the body will always do its best under any set of circumstances within which it finds itself. You know, even if we say disease is a process and we look at cancer, you know, cancer is the end stage of the disease process. And what's happening there is the body is encapsulating this really like life-threatening toxic poisons that it does not have enough energy to get rid of. And it's encapsulated. That's what the tumor is. It's an encapsulation of, and the body is in its innate and infinite wisdom, it's getting that life-threatening toxic poison that it can't get out. It's just encapsulating it and getting it out of the circulatory flow. So even cancerous tumors are the innate wisdom of the organism. Cancer is the right response. Cancer, you know, you say, oh, cancer's terrible, nobody wants it. Of course nobody wants it, but it is the right action. It is the body's correct action under incredible long-term, you know, affronting assaults that this person has delivered to it year after year after year after year. And so people with cancer absolutely raise fevers when the body can just get enough energy. But you'll find not often these people, very rarely will these people get ripping great fevers. They'll just get, you know, a little bit over, but they'll still have a fever. But and also sometimes we see eliminative efforts of the organism where the glands are swollen and the nose is running and their headache and they're achy and they're feeling low in energy. But if you take their temperature, they actually don't have a fever, but their body is still making an effort. And the correct response to that would be to rest that organism, take them off their food for a few days. If they're on medication, of course, we can't fast them, but you know, it's still the same thing. You know, we have to, you know, in all cases, you know, pain is the monitor, rest is the cure, always.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
So just to conclude our discussion, I would love to add 3 steps after the 7 steps to generate toxemia. So after toxemia, it's a natural program of the body to raise fever and get out of the toxic condition and bring the homeostasis back. But there comes the sibling of stimulation, we call the suppression. The sibling of stimulation, right, Yogita? So you started with stimulation here, and it continues with the suppression. And then we chronify the problem and we head towards the chronification, which ends at cancer. Right, with that note, I think we can conclude. Any concluding note from anybody? Any point?
So, we see people in a toxemic state, the body raises a fever, and so often, almost always, this is suppressed. The body's efforts are suppressed. We have this ingrained fear of fever, and so when somebody raises a fever, it's like, you know, the immediate, you know, as with anything the body does that's not pleasant, anything the body does that's not pleasant, our absolute immediate response is to stop it, suppress it, stop it, make it go away. Don't want to feel pain, don't want to go through any discomfort. I want to get back out there and go out and party with my friends and so forth. So this is really inconvenient. I've got work to do. I'm going to stop this. So we stop it. We force the body to hold on to the waste material. And we do that again, and we do that again, and we do that again. And then after a while, the body no longer has the energy to raise the temperature. And this is where we see this really chronic state. This is where we see all the, as we say, you know, we're hearing this term comorbidities. You know, these are just really chronic people that have been suppressed and suppressed and suppressed and suppressed. You know, you don't get to that state. You do not ever get to chronic disease without there having been a lot of suppression going on beforehand. So, and all disease is toxemia. You know, it's just in varying stages of it. Acute disease is a response of is the response of the organism to toxemia, and chronic disease is the response of the organism to toxemia. But behind all, you know, and we can get out the medical dictionary and we can flip through and we can come up with thousands of different what medicine will call diseases. They're not. They're just symptoms. They're them symptoms of toxemia, and so we don't treat the symptom. We remove the cause of the toxemia. So yeah.
Right.
When you understand that, it's liberating. Once you understand it, it's liberating. You don't have to fear. You know, as we, Kalyan and I were saying, you know, we're talking about, you know, immunization. You know, well, nature cure will immunize you against fear.
That's a wrong word to use.
I know. But that's it, you know, understand how disease is a process. It's not a thing, it's not an entity. A healthy person doesn't walk down the road and then boom, 2 weeks later they've got cancer or anything like that. No such thing. No such thing. So
can I just say,
yes,
how have we ended up like this? Like, I mean, I'm a very logical, practical person. Sorry about the lawn mowing again, but why are we in this state? Where have we gone completely wrong? Because it makes perfect sense to me. And I don't have a PhD. I haven't even got a degree. I've got some diplomas up my sleeve. I just don't understand it. I'm perplexed by, you know, by it all, I suppose, and by the medical system and how this makes so much sense.
I'm not sure if we go on debating on this.
No, I just needed to put it out there, so it's okay. That could be for another time, but I'm perplexed. And
ultimately, Carolyn, it comes down to money. It really does. You know, like
money.
when Louis Pasteur, you know, there's a really good book written by C.E. Hume, I think it is, and it's called, you know, Beauchamp or Pasteur. Now, Beauchamp, you know, is terrain theory, and Pasteur is germ theory.
Yeah.
When germ theory got launched out into the world, you know, finally, you know, you see at that point in history, medicine was struggling they were grappling, you know, they had no idea what was going on, and doctors didn't have great, you know, reputations within the community, etc. But when the germ theory was launched, and when they go, it's all down to germs, and we can give you medicines to kill off these germs, and you see that it's perpetuated by the fact that there's an absolute immense amount of money being made in it. You know, there's no money to be made in health, but there's an extraordinary amount of money to be made in managing the disease.
So are you proposing, Victoria, money is the devil?
Money is the devil? No,
are you
man
proposing
is.
That? This is actually a very complicated.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
It is very sad, you know, and you know, as you said before, we're a hedonistic creature. We're also a very selfish creature. We're very driven by, you know, I mean, that's a whole. I inherited the Kenneth Jaffrey library, and a big section of his library is on the writings of Karl Marx and of, you know, that communist. Yeah, absolutely, you know, like, and making life fair and equal, and, you know, like, we just don't live in that world, though. You know, unfortunately, communism has not been successful anywhere. So
though I have some other viewpoints on this, but it will take longer.
I always get a bit nervous when I enter into the philosophical fray when Kalyan's listening. I always know I'm going to learn something. You always teach me something. Which is great.
Yeah. So I don't consider that it's a mistake, but it's a process of modifying ourselves. Like the stimulation, habit of stimulation is an achievement. Like the creation of the environment which is pleasurable is an achievement by mankind in itself. You know, if you just pick up that particular knack of creation and the modification of the environment to make it more pleasurable, this is an achievement. What we have achieved. And it's a process of the evolution of the intellect that in between we do. So for example, if you're suppose learning a subject, any subject, per se mathematics or physics, and you are learning a concept, and you are doing some mathematics around it, and you are doing some mistakes. but those mistakes actually contributes a lot to learn that concept in a deeper way. So when I looked at myself, who was completely addicted with Diet Coke, like I used to have per month around 50 to 100, 50 to 70 cans of Diet Coke disposed, being disposed every month. So from there, now I feel a sense of vomiting when I see Diet Coke is being drunk. So it is an evolution. It's a process of evolution. You know, it's a layer of the awareness that we all pass through. And in the next layer of the awareness, we may think that the previous layer of awareness did a mistake. That's a term that we use. But these are the phases I understand. And the proof of that evolution of the intellect is this gathering and discussion. Maybe it's a small gathering, but definitely we are trying to become aware about the nature and trying to sync with the nature more and more. So I prefer not to term those mistakes, but there is a scope of modification. With that term, I think with that note, we can conclude the session, and we'll soon be back with another episode of Clarity Life on different topics. So I request all of you to fill the feedback form, which I'll share, and where you can propose the next topic also. We take the feedback very seriously. Yeah. Right? Thank you.
Thank you. And it's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Great questions.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.